Welcome to Real, Raw, Relatable, the podcast that brings you stories and experiences from entrepreneurs and business leaders. And now, here's your host, Zachary Ellis.
All right. Well, James, thanks for taking the time to meet with me today. Where you at?
I'm in Cabo, brother. Hanging out at our Cabo house and surviving the similar heat you guys are in Texas. Just a little more humid, maybe. So I saw yesterday it was like 19 straight days of 100 plus. And I also saw that it was the hottest day in the history of the world. So they averaged all the temperatures together. So I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, hey, you're having more fun than I am here at the office, but definitely glad you took some time, especially time when you're in Cabo, to meet with me. And you know, obviously this podcast is focused around entrepreneurship, sales, marketing. Obviously, it seems like everybody has a podcast now, but mine, I wanted to add that little bit of difference to it, where we're sharing, you know, stories that both you and I have shared through the entrepreneurship journey, where we got started, how we got started, ideas, stuff like that. So I know you've said it 1,000 times, and I thought to myself, I said, man, do I really want to ask him, tell us about where you grew up and where you were born and all that? But I'll let you go through it.
Sure, it's a cute little story. Born to two 17-year-old high school students that got a little too friendly, a little too early in life. Not homeless, but almost homeless. So the local electrical shop hired my dad as an apprentice and let us stay in their little house behind the shack, and kind of grew up there for a few years, and have some fond memories of my mom painting the bathroom walls with different little things to keep us happy. Moved into our first house when I was about 2.5. It was a $9,000 house, about 1,200 square feet, and so let's begin my journey through life, and discovered that if I wanted anything extra other than food on the table, I had to earn it myself. Learned that pretty early in life, and so I started making pot holders and selling them at the local church bazaars, and did that long enough to be able to go down to the local hardware store and buy a lawnmower and a rake, and started the James Webb lawnmower service at I think I was about 9 years old. So kind of did that and worked my way through different things, and ended up in the printing business. Worked full time through high school as a print press operator, and that's kind of the short version of it. I had two little brothers that came along.
So you were born in Mississippi, Laurel, Mississippi. For those of you that don't know where Laurel is, it's a small town. I've been there a few times. The last time I was there was November of last year, and we took the one flight from Dallas into Hattiesburg, and couldn't get a flight back out the next day. It was supposed to be a one-day turnaround, and it was a nightmare. It ended up being 3 days before I was back home.
Oh, my Lord.
But so grew up in Mississippi, obviously, you know, kind of being able to start your own company so that you're able to build pot holders, sell them, so on and so forth. What was your first job that you got as a teenager, early in your 20s?
Yeah, my first real job after kind of you go the pot holder, the raking and mowing yards, to the newspaper route, and then finally I got involved in the local printing business. I think Kinko's, 50 years ago, and started out delivering packages at 13. I had my own car at 13. In law, you could do that. You probably can't do that a lot of other places. No, and just kind of worked my way through the printing industry. And when I was a senior in high school, I was their head pressman. So I worked, went to school from 8 to 12, and then after school went to work. And it was 6 to 8 hours a day, and usually on Saturdays. Listen, I had a car, I had some money in my pocket. I was in pretty good shape for me at that time.
Yeah, life is good. You're rolling around at 13 with some money, you're good. In a lot better position. A lot of kids now, they're texting on their phone on the couch eating potato chips. So
I had no idea about video games or any of that. The closest thing I can come to that is watching Three Stooges and Popeye every morning. So that's as close as I got to that.
So how long did you spend in the printing business?
So I was in the printing business through high school, and then I went to the local junior college. I was fortunate enough to sing in the church choir, so my choir director got me a scholarship. So that was a $250 scholarship, and then I had to come up with the other $250, and we were on a quarterly system then. And I had one of my first, experiences that's kind of defined my resilience. I was about to start junior college, and woke up one morning with blood all over the pillow, and 3 days later in intensive care unit, and I had two benign brain tumors that were eating through the dura of my brain, and almost died. So survived that, missed the first quarter of college, and then went back to college and sang in the choir, and didn't really know what I was going to do. And I think the interesting story was still in the printing business at that point. I was walking through the campus and saw a sign that said, "Hey, interested in X-ray technology, call this number." And I thought, well, I'm 18 years old. I got a girlfriend. We'll probably get married soon. And I enrolled, got accepted in the program, and did what I call a 2-year slave labor program at the hospital, where you basically work 60 hours a week for free, learning how to be an X-ray tech.
I was saying, what's the nice word that they label it as now? It's not a working interview, internship. There you go.
Oh yeah, internship's a cool word now. Not then. It was slave labor. Uh, and I always laugh about the fact that after I got accepted into school, the little girl I was dating dumped me. So, she had not dumped me, I probably never would have gone this path in my life. It's kind of one of those little tiny moments in life you look back on.
Yeah, and you say, "Hey, I'm kind of glad this one happened."
Yeah, because I stayed with the X-ray program, and then I met someone else. Got married at I think I was 19, about to turn 20 when I got married, and finished X-ray tech school. Took the night shift in the emergency room. Lots of crazy stories about doing that in a county hospital. You see all sorts of stuff. But I went back to school in the daytime and got my bachelor's degree.
What year was that you started the X-ray facility?
I started X-ray tech school in 1978. Graduated in 1980. Graduated from my bachelor's degree in 18 months. So the latter part of 81. Another cute side story. The day I graduated, I get a call from hospital administration. I think I'm in trouble. I go meet with them, and they offer me the director of education job, the head of the radiology program I graduated from 18 months earlier at 21 years of age. Had 15 students. 7 of them were my age, and 3 of them I went to high school with. So crazy learning management lessons.
Yeah, that's a huge responsibility at that age for sure.
It was. It was dumped right on me, and I accepted it, and really enjoyed teaching. Half the time at the hospital, half the time at the junior college. Enjoyed that a lot. Think about doing that again someday, but then life keeps throwing you curveballs and fun things, and the second part of the story is sitting in a little house in Laurel, Mississippi, with my wife, and a Miller pony. If you remember, Miller ponies in my hand, and a quarter in the other hand. I flipped it and said, "Heads we go to Dallas, tails we go to Atlanta, because I need to get a master's degree and do something with my career." And literally the next day, I quit my job, turned in my 2-week notice, and in 2 weeks loaded up a pickup truck and a bass boat and headed to Duncanville, Texas, and slept in the Redbird Mall parking lot for a couple of nights trying to figure out what the heck I'd just done. So these are just little steps in my career.
Yeah, for any of those of you that are listening, use the quarter method. I recommend it also. That's incredible though, to pick up and just completely move. It doesn't matter the city, show up, not sure of exactly what you're going to do. And for some of those that don't know, James wrote a book here recently, not too long ago. I don't know what year it was released, but I know it was recently, and called Redneck Resilience, and that kind of explains some of the story more in depth. And I know I've seen some of the podcasts, both visual and audio, that I've listened to, and it seems like everybody kind of asks about that very early on story. So I feel like it's important that we share it here. But we actually met, James and I met through my banker, who is actually right here in Fort Worth. So our office is headquartered in Fort Worth, and your place is it McKinney that you're in?
We live in Frisco, and my office is in Plano.
Plano, excuse me. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
So office is in Plano. So James and I met each other a couple months ago, and obviously he's been a huge help. As entrepreneurs, I feel like we all kind of find ourselves in that situation where it's asking for advice, or we find ourselves in a situation where like, hey, probably need to make a phone call about this. So, um, what happened in your transition to entrepreneurship? What year was it that you decided to take the jump, and what was it that kind of influenced you to make that decision?
Yeah, it's actually quite a cute story. So I again lucked out and landed a job in Lewisville, Texas, as director of radiology. So at that point, I was the youngest director of a radiology department in the U.S. And this is way before the internet. So I went to college at night to North Texas State, or now University of North Texas. Graduated and really thought I was going to be a hospital administrator. And then this guy walks in the door and introduces himself and says, "There's this technology coming out called MRI. We're going to build a mobile MRI company, and we want you to join us." And I was like, "No, I'm going to be a hospital administrator." But I flew to Connecticut to meet with his team, and I did a job interview in a Datsun 240ZX at about 130 miles an hour, and decided that I would jump into the corporate world of medicine versus the hospital world of medicine. And so took the job, worked my butt off for 3 years. We went from 2 mobile MRIs to 53 mobile MRIs across the country. We were the second largest. And then I had one of the bigger shocks in my life. I'm sitting in an office in Dallas overlooking the city. I've got about 300 employees. I'm 30 years old. And the phone rings and they go, "Mr. Webb, we've sold the company. And since you have no equity, you're fired." And I was literally fired on the spot, and learned a very valuable lesson about equity. And that's really the first time I started thinking about, hey, how do I do this by myself so I don't put myself at risk like this? Now, fortunately, I was somewhat known in the industry at that time, so I got a job within a day or two at another company and bounced through the corporate world, went through a divorce, unfortunately, and then sitting in Boca Raton, Florida for about 5 years. Married Marcia, then got remarried. And a doctor walked up to me from Trinidad and Tobago and said, "Hey, I'm going back there to become Minister of Health. Would your company bring MRI to Trinidad and Tobago?" Because it had not gone out of the United States by that point. It was still pretty new technology. And I knew the company wouldn't do it, but I thought, here's my leap. And so I jumped and opened up MRIs all over the Caribbean and Latin America. Spent about 3 or 4 years with just crazy, crazy stories, and put my life at risk 3 or 4 times. And finally sold that company in 2000. And that's really the fun part of the book, telling all those crazy stories. Not many people have been held at gunpoint by the Sandinistas and things like that. So
Yeah, it's a crazy road we travel. It is. That's
it
amazing to
can
do.
be.
To have that phone call happen and say, "Hey, you don't have a job anymore, and you're just completely lost." Um, that's an incredible feeling. I know I talked with a guy last week that was let go from his job, and unfortunately was a tech company, and kind of found himself in that stage of, "Hey, we're laying off to reduce the staff," but obviously not anywhere near comparison of saying, "Hey, you don't have a job, anymore at the level that you're at." Um, so you decided to start your own MRI company, which was called Preferred, right?
This is prior to Prefer. This was Paradigm Healthcare, because I was shifting, so I used the word paradigm for shifting. Yeah, and Paradigm did that, and we only built about 5 locations. And there was an international player stepping into the market. I had a 3-year-old son. I had a new baby on the way, about to be born. Had 3 or 4 pretty dangerous experiences, and I just decided, you know what, it's time to get out of it. And that company had approached me about buying me out, and so we negotiated, accepted their offer, I had a few investors, so we all made a little money. Not the kind you can quit working, but the kind you can take a breath and okay, what am I going to do next? And that sort of led me down the bigger path, which was when I invested with two buddies back in a medical imaging center in Dallas. So I'm living in South Florida this time, and supposed to be mailbox money, but the checks kept going that way. They never came my way, and so I packed up a 3-week-old baby, a 3-year-old son, a supportive but pissed off wife, and I moved from Boca Raton, Florida, to Plano, Texas, and went to work. I can remember kissing her on the cheek and saying, "I'll see you in about 5 years." I had to go back to work, and work I did.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, the checks were they wrote return to sender. The sender was making sure they took them for you so that you didn't receive them. That's a
Exactly.
terrible deal. And I know we both heard some horror stories about guys that partner in these companies and just get drained of everything, whether it's, guys that are investing money or guys that are supposed to be operational partners and never see the money. That's terrible. So you got a couple of kids, your wife's upset, which I know that feeling. Um, what do you do now? What was your next move after that?
Well, I went in and took over the company. That was step one. I was the majority owner, and we went through a lot of trials and tribulations. It was very tough being a small operator in a big city of Dallas. And by 2003, I had lost everything. I couldn't even pay my mortgage because I didn't take a salary, so I was living off my money. And my wife was a stay-at-home mom. And I made a couple of business decisions that people said would not work, and they did. And made sure I had a lawyer vet them because it's healthcare, and you got to be a little careful how you do things in healthcare sometimes. And the next month there was $9,000 in the bank. I split with my partners, and then the next month there was $12,000 in the bank. I split with my partners, and I don't know. Within 3 or 4 years, if there wasn't $1 million a month coming in the door, we'd want to know why. And so we sort of built our medical imaging company. And then I think one of the interesting lessons I learned was looking at our expenses and what expenses could I turn into revenue streams. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm paying people to fix my machines. I'm paying contractors. And so we set up our own service company. So we were able to hire mechanics, service our own medical equipment, and then we started servicing other people's equipment. Billing company, we outsourced our billing. We bought the billing company, brought it in-house, did all of our own billing, which cut the expense, but then we started outsourcing billing. Medical staffing, same thing. We started our own medical staffing company. So we really looked at expenses and tried to create revenue streams. And then the second thing we did was we looked at our client base. And, our client base is kind of multiple people. Our client base is the physician. That's the primary guy. The client base is the little girl in his office that schedules the patients. And then our other client is obviously the patient that we have to take care of. And we realized that pain management doctors were sending us a lot of patients. And so met with a few of them and realized that they didn't really have a place they could do injections other than in their office or in a hospital. And so we set up something called a pain procedure center, joint ventured with the doctors because we could do that because we weren't doing Medicare. And boom, it took off also. And at one point we had, and then we turned them into surgery centers eventually. We had 11 surgery centers with 53 partners, pain doctors all over the state. So we're living a great life. It's 2012. We've got 28 imaging centers. We've got 11 surgery centers. We delved into toxicology a little bit, built 2 of those, sold them. Life was pretty good. And then you have those things that hit you in life that you don't see coming. And I don't know if you want me to go into the personal side of the story, but it kind of reminded me of when I got fired in Dallas because it caught me by surprise. I'm on a plane with my wife, Marcia, and life is great. And we're first class and we're drinking a cocktail and we've just come from the big meeting radiology show. where I hosted my own dinner and everything. And it's one of those times, once again, you thinking you're the man. And then she says to me, I've got a stomach ache. Can we stop at the local doctor? And we land and we do. And 24 hours later, confirmed diagnosis of stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Didn't see it coming. Caught us completely by surprise. She had 6 months to live. And nothing like having to tell your wife that she has pancreatic cancer, because I had to tell her because the doctors called me. And we went all over the world looking for answers. And we ended up at MD Anderson and made every 10-day trips to MD Anderson. I had, at that point, turned the company over to the team. They were running it, just keeping me informed. And on May 20th, they dismissed her from MD Anderson and gave her 30 days to live. And on the drive home, I got a really bad pain in my back. And I said, I cannot believe I have a kidney stone right now. So I took some of her pain medicine, got her back home, put her to bed, went to the hospital. And I didn't have a kidney stone. I had a tumor the size of a baseball, and I had a confirmed stage 3 renal cancer. So I just went home, sat in my driveway, and wondering what the hell was happening. We're achieving our financial goals, and now my family's completely disrupted. I'm worried about my boys. Got to set up hospice care for her, so I'm doing that while at the same time trying to get myself treated. They wanted to do radiation to try to shrink the tumor and save the kidney, and I just said no. Just cut me open and gut me, and so they did. And took the kidney, took the tumor, took some other stuff. Walked out of the hospital in 19 hours to go home to take care of her. She made it 6 more days and passed away at our house. It was a tough time, really tough time. And the one thing I learned is that having a few dollars in your pocket makes the tough times a little easier, because we could stay at nice hotels on our travels. And now I could take the summer off with my boys, and my boys and I just traveled the whole summer, just all over the place, just trying to, bring it back to normal, get connected. And then that fall, I went back to work, a single dad raising 2 little boys.
Yeah, your entire world is flipped upside down. Wow. Wow. Yeah,
Completely.
just I couldn't even imagine, couldn't even fathom having that feeling of, all your financial goals are being met. And obviously, it seems like it never stops. As business owners, we're all thinking about, whatever it is. Maybe it's the, hiring people, training people, your accounting staff, money, invoices outstanding. And then, you have to go home and still be the dad and be the husband and be the spouse. And that's terrible. So you're meeting all of these goals, and then your entire world is flipped upside down. Not only with your wife's situation, but with yours. Um, I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah, it was an interesting time in my life, probably the most toughest time. It also taught me a lot of lessons. It changed some of my thought process going forward. I started thinking more about exits than I ever had thought before. I thought more about legacy and my children, and really just how do I structure this so that I could be a single dad, keep growing the company, and manage to do it, but also recognize that I either needed to create a vehicle that was a cash cow that didn't need me, so I could go do some other stuff because I still wanted to be an entrepreneur, or I had to exit. And so in 2017, we exited. Preferred Imaging was the name of it. It's public knowledge for about 94 million. So it wasn't a bad payday with, given what we've been doing. And we exited the pain company, a surgery center at a time, because you kind of sell them the hospital systems. So we did all of that. And that kind of was sort of the end of my medical career at about 2019.
Yeah, that was something I know that you and I have talked about numerous times, is starting, A, B, C, D, E, having the exit in mind. And obviously I've shared that with you, especially with having my company here, truckfin.com. That was really one big thing where I feel like as entrepreneurs, usually, well, not just as entrepreneurs, but as people, when times get tough and when we don't know what to do, we go back to our habits. And obviously you hear everybody talk about that is when things get bad, we fall back to our habits, we fall back to the things that make us feel comfortable. So, that brings up a great point. What are some of the ways in either companies you've invested in and conversations you've had, or companies that you've started yourself? What are some ways to brainstorm ideas, number one? But number two, how do you brainstorm ideas that will allow you an exit? Because I know in my situation, I started this company because I saw the technology side of it to buy semi trucks completely online. But our downfall was I didn't know who I was going to sell to. It took me some time to figure out possible avenues, but there was a lot of different things that I was unaware of, what financial commitments I needed to meet, who was I going to have sell the company, et cetera, et cetera. So, kind of on that ground level, what are some ways that you can come up with ideas and then also put an exit behind it that makes sense?
Yeah, well, you said the words A, B, C, D, E for exit, though you and I've talked about before, and so one of the first things I look at in a deal is, okay, what's the exit going to look like? Who's buying? Who are the buyers? Is it strategic buyers? Is it private equity buyers? Family office? I mean, who are the buyers for this type of business? Two, what's the competition look like? I don't mind competition, for the record, particularly if you're creating a brand or you're going to get your piece of the action. I don't want too much competition, but I do look at that. So I start working backwards in my thought process now, and then I bounce the idea by other people. Call up Zach and go, hey, what do you think about this idea? Someone's presenting it to me. And then third, and I'm in a different world now because, as you know, I went from the medical world into the franchise world. And so now I do that, and then I go to the franchisor, because in the franchise world, that's your success is highly dependent upon brand awareness. And, we talk about, everybody knows what Weight Watchers is, everybody knows what Orange Theory Fitness is, but I can tell you in 2013, nobody knew what Orange Theory Fitness was, but they did a great job of creating a brand. And so I kind of work backwards in that respect.
Yeah. So having your buyer in mind, having your competition, and then obviously talking to somebody that you trust that would give you valuable insight. There's some ways to put together an idea. What about those people? And obviously you and I have talked about this also, but what about the entrepreneurs, the people that are passionate, right? And I know me personally here lately, I've had to pull the passion out of some of the other business ideas that I want to do. But if somebody says, "Hey, I'm passionate on creating this company," I feel like the only thing they have truly to work towards is if they're passionate about their company, they're going to have to meet some sort of financial metrics at some point if they're going to borrow money. What do you say to that person if that's what they're following and they want to do this the rest of their life?
Yeah, so I'm not a person that's necessarily a fan of following your passion. I'm passionate about fishing, but I'm not going to make a living at it. I'm passionate about golfing, but I'm terrible. It doesn't mean you can't be passionate about business. I think sometimes the context of the business, they don't look at it deep enough because they're so excited, they're so passionate about it. I'm going to get into the 5-hour energy space, and I've got a new product I'm going to make, and I'm going to bring that to market. Well, you're never going to be 5-hour energy. You're just not. They're too out there. So it's really balancing that desire to do something you want to do with that desire to do something that's going to be a successful business. And so a lot of times I'll look at things. I never thought Orange Theory Fitness, which is one of the things I did, was something I would do. I personally don't like boutique fitness. I don't do workouts with groups. I like putting on my headphones and going to the gym and being by myself. So I wasn't passionate about that concept, but I was passionate about that brand and what they were doing, and I knew they were going to go somewhere with it. Same thing with the latest one, Sinhound. Real passionate about it right now. So it's a balancing act. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I think some people chase their passion too hard and don't look at the business itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when your profit and loss and your balance sheet is showing you negative numbers or numbers that are significantly lower than maybe your competition or some of the other entrepreneurs, that's probably a time you need to look in the mirror. And I've thought about it and thought about it, and obviously I'm kind of in the midst of trying to create another company right now. just because we're seeing so much, I wouldn't say volatility, but there's such a large decrease in the trucking industry, not only with freight rates, but with prices of used trucks, and new truck availability. And I talked about this on the podcast, the Truck Fin podcast, a couple weeks ago. But we had a situation where last March there was 8,000 trucks available to the retail public for everybody to buy, whether new and used. And then we fast forward to March this year, and there's triple that amount.
Wow.
I think there's 21,000. So obviously, when you take what we do, and I guess the nicest way to put it is we're a broker. We are buying trucks from the general public, and then we sell them back to our dealer partners. You have a lot of different variables. You have things like relying on customers inbound to buy their trucks. Number two, you have to hope that the condition is right to buy them. Number three, you have to hope that if they have a payoff, you're getting the title in time. And then number four, you have to turn around and sell that truck. And there's a lot of different things that I've tried to tackle within that business. And I think at some point, coming from a trucking background, I'm kind of now like, man, maybe I want to step back. Maybe I want to look at exiting this company, which may very well be something that I'll do here in the coming months, hopefully. But with that being said, now that I'm kind of in the realm of starting another company, what are a few key things that you would do if you had to start a new company and say you had a couple $100,000 in the bank that you were able to start a company with, which is not it's not feasible for most people, but occasionally some business owners have maybe a couple $100,000 to go out and start a new venture. What would you do?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a couple 100,000 sounds like a lot, but I worry a little bit about, is it enough? And it depends on the business model. If you're building popsicle stands, cool. If you're doing MRI centers that cost $3 million each to build, you probably need a lot bigger budget than that.
Mm-hmm.
So one, I would definitely look at the amount of money I have available and what's my pro forma look like. So many people forget to do pro formas. Do a pro forma, put this on a spreadsheet, understand what the dollars are going to look like. Make sure you got enough. If you don't have enough, you have two options: you go borrow more money, or you got to find investors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a borrowing guy. I don't have a lot of investors, but borrowing has its risk.
I was going to say, so if you're starting a new company, are there any certain industries that you're looking into, whether it's, oil and gas, the tech industry, the animal space? What is it? Is there anything particular that you look at, or do you just look at industries that you are somewhat familiar with or possibly worked with in the past? Obviously, the MRI company related off of your prior experience. You mentioned Orange Theory Fitness. For those of you that don't know, you had 33?
30, yeah, I'll give you that quick side story too, because it's kind of cute. I was a single dad raising two kids, and I went and decided that a guy that lived a few blocks from Jerry Jones and drove a nice car and had a nice house probably shouldn't do the go to the bar scene and do all the dating things. So I went on Match.com and had what I call my first date in 22 years, and it was my last first date for the rest of my life. I met Kathy, and we were in South Florida. A couple of years later, she was living in her house. I was still raising my boys, and a buddy we were having dinner with said, "Hey, have you ever been to an Orange Theory Fitness workout?" And I won't say what I said, but I said, "What the blankety blank is Orange Theory Fitness?" And the next day, and this gets into the passion thing. The next day, I took the class, and you know what? It was all right. It was a fun class to take, but the trainer, she bled orange. I had not seen someone with that much passion for a business, and that's really what caught my attention. It was not the workout. It was an employee of this franchise had this much passion for her company, and I thought, okay, that's a good culture. That's something to look into. And initially, we bought 3 franchises. Kathy quit her job and was running those 3 franchises, and then Orange Theory called and said, "Hey, we're trying to sell bigger territories." And we ended up buying North Texas and put together an infrastructure and a team. And by the time we finished, we had, 300 employees and a nice bottom line. And private equity was actively looking at these deals. In fact, we had one of the craziest ones. We hired Fifth Third's Bank to take us to market after 5 years, because there you go, A, B, C, D, E, exit.
Yeah. Yeah.
and did that. And we had 70 interested parties. We had 36 letters of intent. I'd never seen anything like it personally. Never seen the multiples like it before. It was such a hot, hot, hot product. And so we packaged it all up. We merged in with a couple of other territories in the area to make it bigger, and sold it to a private equity group on December the 9th of 2019, which for the record was 3 months before COVID hit. And I planned the exit. I had no clue about COVID, no
That's
clue
perfect timing.
whatsoever about it. It was unbelievable lucky timing.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, Orange Theory, obviously, I know there's one here. They're everywhere. I know they're Fort Worth, Dallas, um, some out in East Texas. I'll see them when I go fish out there. But that's incredible to, especially see people with a passion that are, people that have the passion are driving the customer force and the customer base when they come in. And I'll go work out at Anytime Fitness, and you hardly ever see anybody there. Whether it's the one here in Fort Worth, or you travel and you see them across the nation. But even some of those smaller, little franchise places, whether it's a little restaurant or a tanning salon or whatever, when you find those people, it's hard to look past, and you just have a good feeling. You say, you know what, like that person genuinely enjoys their job. But um, that really makes me think, having people that are passionate about your brand is such a huge deal. And you mentioned a really interesting thing too, is having a team behind you and having 300 people. So if somebody's possibly getting started, or maybe they have a company now, I know we've especially faced it after the whole COVID thing, and even today we're still hiring. Um, did you have somebody over your HR department? Where were you able to find somebody that could manage to put together a team, but not only a team with people that were capable of doing the job that stayed?
Yeah, I always had and I've done uh, 14 companies. I've exited 8 of them. Every company, I have a president of that company. And again, I'm older and I'm a little bit different position than when I'm starting out. If I'm starting out, I'm the president. But a lot of people, what I see, sometimes they take money off the table too quick, and they don't build that infrastructure. Now, again, if you're doing a mom and pop tanning salon, for lack of a better example, and you're going to work it, you're the manager of it, you're going to make $75,000 a year. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're an entrepreneur that wants the bigger picture, then you've got to start investing in your infrastructure. You need a CFO. You need a president, unless you're the president. You need an HR director. You need a marketing director. And that's overhead. So, in the case of my latest deal I'm doing, we figured out the first 3 locations, once they're profitable, that's just simply going to pay our overhead. We won't make any money off the first 3 locations because we're setting up that much infrastructure. But we're also building 25 locations. So, we need that in place to help us do that faster. And it was the
Yeah.
same with Orange Theory. It grew. We just kept adding folks as we needed them. And then we went from, the one manager of the gyms to then we had 2 managers and 5 managers. We kind of allocated about 5 gyms per regional manager, and then each gym had a manager, and all the employees stayed with the deal but me. So once we sold it, they all had jobs. I had 4 of them that had equity in the company. I let them have equity, so they also got nice little checks. It worked out well.
Yeah. Who would you say is the most important person in the first 3 hires that you make? Who are the first 3 people that you would hire if you were to start a new company today?
Well, today the first person I'm going to hire is the person that's going to run the company, because I'm not running companies now. I'm more in the advisor stage, more in the money stage, more in the exit stage. So my first person is okay, who can do this? And secondary to that, it tends to be marketing. When you're bringing a brand to market, and again, it depends on what you're doing. I'm in the franchise world now, so I'm doing new franchises. So I'm having to help the franchisor bring that brand to market. So, we immediately hired a PR firm. We immediately hired a digital marketing firm. We immediately hired someone to be over all that. That's overhead. It costs you money.
Hmm.
But, again, as I mentioned, it'll take 3 to pay the overhead, and then at that point we'll start making money eventually.
That's it's. I feel like marketing is probably what I would say, just because you know I've always been taught if nobody knows you, nobody's going to buy from you. And obviously, with all the social media platforms we have now, the Instagram, the Facebook, the TikToks, the whatever, there's so much availability in that marketing space. So that's having somebody to run the company, I feel like is a really huge deal, and that's something that I struggle with at first. You know, I feel like most days I'm still running the company, but really like that first 2 years, then you have to branch off and try to find like a director of operations. And obviously, I'm a lot younger, but now I'm coming to the point now where I'm coming up on, I'll be 30 next year. I'm really asking myself, hey, what does this look like long term? And I did exactly what you said. It wasn't with a Excel spreadsheet. It was just a piece of paper, and I wrote down, where's our income at now? Where was our income the year before? What are we planning for the next year? And how much money do I want to make? And if I want to sell this, uh, what financial metrics do I need to hit? Because that's a huge thing that I think a lot of people overlook. And I've never sold a company, but all of the research that I've done, especially in this stage, we've kind of been labeled a tech company, and we're not really a SaaS company because we don't really offer a service, but we're in that tech space. So we're not a semi truck dealership, but we're not a SaaS company, and it's hard to research and find multiples and find what kind of EBITDA a company wants. And talked to a company a couple of days ago that said, "Yeah, we'll just put you on every business for sale website out there, and when somebody contacts us, we'll work it." And I said, "No, I'm probably not interested in that." So, what's your insight there? If maybe you spend a couple years and you're working and you're building a company, what metrics do you feel like are important for you to make an exit? I guess in regards to financial metrics, because it seems like that's what everybody looks at.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've learned a lot lately that there's groups out there that look at the top line. There's groups that look at the bottom line. There's groups that look at the EBITDA. I learned a new term the other day, pro forma embedded EBITDA, which I'd never heard of before. That they were looking at, and what that is very simple. You've got 10 locations, but you've got three more leases signed. They literally would let you pro forma those lease locations for a 2 year pro forma and add that to the bottom line. It was kind of interesting to see them do that. I'd never done that in my life, where someone's letting me EBITDA pro forma out of an office space with nothing in it. So I look at some of that. I think that one of the other things I've figured out, and if you're big enough, is that it's hard to do the sale yourself. So the last three deals I've done, I've had an investment banker in the middle. Yes, it costs money, but they get to be the bad guy. They get to do the hardcore negotiating. I get to keep the relationship with the potential buyer and do more of the passive, negotiating. So I really like having that third party negotiator in my last three deals. I think it made a huge difference.
Really, and that was just who just say Fifth Third Bank, one of the investment bankers.
The third was one of them. When I did, that was with Orange Theory. When I did my imaging center, there was a guy out of Atlanta that's what he does, and I hired him. He's specifically in the radiology space, so he knew all the strategic buyers. That wasn't really a private equity kind of deal. That was more of a strategic deal.
So it seems like there's a couple different metrics that people are looking at. You're doing top line revenue, bottom line revenue, EBITDA, stuff like that. I mean, are there any? And I don't know, because I feel like it's different with every company. Like I know the guy that I talked to said, "Hey, if you guys are doing bottom line revenue, some net profit of 2 million plus, it's usually this multiple, or if you're doing 5 million plus, it's usually this multiple." And I know a lot of that's tricky. I just don't know with the experience that you've had. I know sometimes a lot of business owners, especially like me, are just sitting. They're like, we know what our balance sheet is, and we know the kind of income that we've made, and we're just like, is this enough, or am I wasting my time to be able to get the kind of exit that we want? Because I don't think that anybody would put in their time and say, okay, we've done $10 million in sales. We've netted $2 million after all expenses, et cetera, et cetera. Let's sell the company for 2 times more than we netted, 4 million. I don't know. Somebody may do that. They may not. So what's your experience with that?
Yeah, my experience has been it's kind of an industry-driven number, and it's also been industry-driven what number they're looking at. I mean, I heard recently in some SaaS companies that people were really looking at the top line, and I was trying to figure out why they look at the top line, and they're explaining to me that there's just not a lot of overhead in those type of companies sometimes. A lot of it's IT, a lot of it's this. But then you turn around one that's labor intensive, with high, well, we use MRI centers, $3 million. You're spending $1.5 million on a machine. Nobody's going to look at the top line there. They want to know what you make at the end of the day. Because you got 10 employees, a really expensive machine that still has debt on it, and so those are kind of driven down toward the EBITDA number. So I think it varies, and I don't think there's any magic answer to it. I've exited, a 5 multiple. I've exited a 16 multiple. So they just kind of vary depending on the industry.
So it's pretty much all industry driven.
I personally, my experience has been it's industry driven. You want to get in the medical imaging business now, they're doing 4 and 5 multiples. That's all. Because there's an imaging center on every corner. The beverage space, which I'm in another deal, I mean, one of the companies just sold at a 24 multiple. So I thought, wow, that's a good company to get into. Now I'm a silent investor in that company, but hopefully it gets a 24 multiple when it exits. And then this ScentHound thing that we're doing now, which is our latest franchise. We have 25 licenses in Dallas. We just opened our second store, about to open our third store. That's when I mentioned earlier, we'll get our overhead covered at that point, and then we'll start making money, and already thinking about the exit. And that'll definitely be a private equity play, and probably be something along the lines when the franchisor, because people forget when you're a franchisee, you kind of have a supervisor called the franchisor.
Yeah.
And I like to get to know them and find out their exit plans and those sort of things. But I think these ScentHounds are going to exit for pretty big multiples. We'll see.
Yeah. And what is ScentHound for those that aren't familiar?
I'm sorry. ScentHound was something we discovered last fall. It is a pet health, wellness, and grooming franchise. It's new. What I liked about it was a couple of things. One, my family are animal lovers, dog lovers, so that didn't hurt. 2, there seems to be a huge, huge shortage of groomers right now. That when I talk to people, they go, "Yeah, I have to register, plan a month ahead of time to get my dog's haircut." And then I also found out that one of the founders of Orange Theory Fitness was a big investor behind this company. That caught my attention. So flew to Florida, met with them. They had a great infrastructure set up. Reminded me so much of Orange Theory, how they had theirs set up. And they were new, which is important too. I'm not going to go look at Taco Bell franchises. I need to find something new. I need to look at territories, not franchises. So we looked at the Dallas territory. There was nothing there but one, and we bought them since then. And so we were able to sit with the franchisor, negotiate a good bit of the Dallas market. And we just like the model. But I like the exit model. I like the concept of the need for it. Now, it's got some negatives to it as well. It's a high turnover business. So, we will probably hire our first HR director this fall once we get about our third or fourth store open, because we'll have a lot of turnover in that particular space. There appears to be. I'm still learning. And, we've already brought on our controller. We've got Jeff as the president. We've got our first regional operations manager, because he's primarily focused on development. So she's focused on the operations. So that's kind of our initial infrastructure to get this thing started.
That's exciting. And I know you've got a lot of different companies going on, which we won't get into all of them, but I know you and I have talked about them. And that was something that I wanted to ask you was, obviously, I know as business owners, we kind of sit back and we ask ourselves, no matter where we're at, whether I'm traveling on a plane or I'm driving down the highway, I feel like in my mind, and some other people may feel the same way, but we're consistently thinking about different revenue, whether we can increase the revenue, maybe we can put out a marketing spin that will do this, or maybe we can go and target these customers and we're able to obtain that revenue. I guess kind of talk to maybe not so much as what you're doing in a day, but maybe some of your mindset and kind of how you structure your life as to going into these companies, making them successful and exiting, or what kind of thoughts do you have when you're like, man, maybe I could do this and it would add extra income, or how do you contain all those thoughts? Because some days I feel like it's just a 24-hour a day rodeo, like it never stops. Like I wake up at 4 in the morning and I'm like, man, maybe we could do this and I'd make more revenue. So what does your day look like, or excuse me, what does your life and mindset look like to control some of that?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm getting fussed at lately by my wife because I'm working all the time. I'm in Cabo, my house in Cabo, and I'm sitting in front of a computer, and I'll be here most of the day.
Yeah.
We'll get to sneak out about 4:30 and play 9 holes of golf. Uh, but I don't stop thinking. I think that's what separates the successful, good entrepreneurs. That you just don't stop thinking, and you're thinking about, okay, Sinhound. How do I increase the customer base? Because it's a new concept. How do I get the brand awareness? Well, this morning I just had an article released in the Dallas Business Journal. So cool. That'll help with brand awareness. You know, so I'm always thinking about how do I increase the customer base of a new idea, and where can I introduce that idea? Okay, well they do a dog parade in McKinney, Texas. Guess what? I'm gonna have a booth there, a team there working it, passing out brochures, not just passing out brochures for clients, but passing out brochures for employees. Because I
Hmm.
know people that are passionate about dogs. Some of them work in that industry. So we're always, always, always thinking about how to increase revenue, or in the case of a franchise, how to increase membership. And I don't stop thinking about it. It's always something new, something different. And then you get lucky sometimes and you max out a store. So you can slow down a little bit at that store. You know, you can only do so many dogs, you can only do so many Orange Theory Fitness classes during a 24-hour period. So our goal is to get to that level with as many locations as we can. And then you can monitor it, slow down a little bit, make sure that the attrition rate's not too high, replace that attrition rate, with new clients.
What do you think are a few things that new business owners overlook when they start a company?
I'll tell you, there's one that it would take us an hour to talk about, but I'm so passionate about it. They completely overlook how they structure their company, and not only their company, but how they structure their own personal estate. Listen, I never thought I would have giant exit like I had, but when I die, people forget about estate tax. So you got $100 million in the bank, and you kick the bucket. If you haven't planned it, 40 million of that's going back to the government. So your heirs may not end up with a lot of liquidity. They may end up with some hard assets. They may end up with some business investments, but they take their liquidity to pay that tax. And so I talk to people about, look, it's very simple. You start with an LLC, create some asset protection for yourself. I have mine owned by a family limited partnership. I have a general partner that's an attorney. So he owns 1% of the company. In the operating agreement, he gets no revenue, no losses. He gets a fee paid to him. But I know in legal tense, as the 99% limited partner, I don't really have a say in the vote, in the thing he does. So if something bad happens, he can be the bad guy and say no, and not me. Well, then I learned later on that I don't need to personally own 99%. I need that owned by a 678 trust, so that an attorney said this to me once in 2004. He said, the greatest thing in life is owning nothing and using everything. And that's where I'm at in my life. I don't personally own, I own a fancy car and a house, and that's it. Everything else has gone through this stream. And we have a saying at my family, they don't teach you that at Jones County Junior College, where I went, because they don't teach you this stuff at Jones County Junior College. They don't teach you this stuff at SMU. They don't teach you that, hey, wait, think 50 years down the road when you've made it. what
Yeah.
happens. So I'm passionate about with entrepreneurs talking about asset protection first, then estate planning, because you just don't know. Maybe, just maybe, you hit the home run. And so that's
Yeah.
really
And then you
something I
find
talk
yourself in
to.
that. Yeah, and then you find yourself in that emergency situation where, something bad does happen. You fall off a mountain, or, you're traveling and you get some, god awful sickness. And before you know it, you're on the phone trying to plan out a funeral, and you were just 10 days ago, you left to go on vacation. So that's really interesting that you bring that up, because that is something that a lot of people overlook. And I know even myself, um, I overlooked it there for a while, and finally got a hold of our business lawyer and said, "Hey, what are some things that I can do?" And exactly what you said. He said, "Hey, you need to set up a trust. You need to make sure that both your boys, um, have college plans, and both your boys have the access to assets, and everything is titled and documented in the correct manners." Because the stat of the average American has less than $400 in their bank account for an emergency at any given time still stands. But even more so, that what is it, less than 10% of America has over $400,000 in annual income. That's total income and wealth. You have to think about it. If you're in that top 5%, or even that top 2 or 1%, you have a lot more on the line than so many other people, and you have to legally make sure that all of it's documented correctly, so that if something does happen, you're covered.
Exactly. And throwing one more tiny comment, a key man life insurance. It's not expensive when you're younger. And, you don't know. You hit a tree, you hit a truck, you dump in a ditch. You never know what happens in life. Certainly was surprised about how life changes. And so, I'm a big fan also of when you're younger, getting the key man life insurance so that if something happens to you, if you've got business partners, I have the business funded, and then it buys me out of the business, and my kids get the money, or my heirs get the
Mm,
money. So a lot of times people don't think about that. Okay, well, I've got this successful business going. We're making $6 million a year. I've got a business partner. I die. How's he going to buy me out? So
yeah.
key man life insurance. I did that with preferred imaging. I had 25 million in key man life on me. Thank goodness I didn't need to use it, but we had it there just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because if something can happen, it will happen at some point, right?
it can happen. It usually happens, and then you get through it and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. So your book's out on Amazon, and actually, where all is it available? I guess I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, so the book is called Redneck Resilience: A Country Boy's Journey to Prosperity, and it really every chapter is either a life lesson or a business lesson, and it tells way more details than we've talked about today about my story, and
Mhm.
you know the tragedies as well as the luck, and luck plays a big factor in everything. For the record, I find the harder I work, the luckier I get. But that's called Redneck Resilience. It's on Amazon. I made Amazon bestseller list on 3 different categories, so that was kind of cool. And then you can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it at Books a Million. I have a website you can go to and get it. So there's all sorts of different ways to get it. It's a fun little read, about a 3.5 to 4 hour read, and most people tell me it reads like I talk. So there'll be a few 4 letter words in it, and there'll be some humor in it. But
Yeah.
but most people tend to like it.
Yeah, I know when I read it, I thought to myself, man, this guy sounds a lot like me, and maybe it's the other way around. Maybe I'm a lot like you, but um, I've shared this a few times, and we've got some content that'll be put out on the social media pages and our website. But I feel like you and I correspond so closely with each other, because I grew up from a poverty background, from having a single mother. I grew up in East Fort Worth, in a trailer, and just having the memories. And every now and then you're just driving somewhere, and you're going down the highway, and you have a memory, something that you see reminds you of living in a trailer and having a single mother, and living on that $30,000 income that she had to take care of 2 kids. Just really puts you over the edge and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to work harder, because I know the harder that I work and the more time that I put into something that is benefiting me long term, the luckier you do get. So The book really related to me, and I encourage all of you, if you haven't read it, read it. So as we wrap up here, I have one last question. What advice would you look back on today and give your 25-year-old self?
I think there's probably a couple of things. One, I might have jumped sooner. I think I look back, but I learned so much along the way. Again, that they didn't teach me that at Jones County Junior College. I learned so much through that school of hard knocks. So sometimes I go, well, I wish I'd have jumped earlier. I wish I hadn't done it earlier. The thing we talked about structuring your business the right way. I so wish I'd have structured it the right way in the beginning, because it took me 9 years to restructure my companies so that I fell into that estate tax-free area where I fell into that I didn't own anything. And so if you do it in the beginning, it saves you that hassle. It saves you a bunch load of attorney fees. So I would definitely encourage young entrepreneurs, look at your infrastructure, look at the structure of your business. Everybody goes, oh, I got an LLC. Well, I'm going to tell you something. It's not enough. Think bigger picture. Think longer term. Where am I going to be in 20 years? Where am I going to be in 30 years? What about my children? What about my heirs? I guess that's the advice I'd give. And then we've talked about not necessarily chasing your passion. And I think that some people make that mistake and they go out and chase something that they're really cool about, and sometimes that doesn't work. I want the business to be the passion.
Well, those are huge things, because just like we talked about, people overlook those. They overlook the planning, they overlook the long term, they overlook if something happens to me. But I'll end on this. If a business owner, maybe he goes out or she goes out and follows their passion, or maybe they have a business now that is failing, and obviously we're recording this and it's July 2023, and all the things are going on. You have the administration, you have the interest rates, you have inflation, et cetera, et cetera. At what point would you now look in your mind and say, hey, it's probably time to cut the cord and move on to something else? Because I know that's something that a couple of people reached out to me and they're like, man, here's what I'm doing right now, and it's just not working. So what point would you be like, you know what, I'm just going to cut the cord, or maybe I need to change what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's my definition of resilience is getting knocked down and getting back up and finding a different path. A lot of people think it's just getting knocked down, getting back up, and when you have those type of opportunities, you get knocked down, you get back up, you do the same thing again, you get knocked down again, and people get stuck in that cycle. And at some point, you have to be willing to let go. You have to acknowledge your failures. You have to acknowledge your mistakes. And then you have to pick that new path. And for me, that's happened a few times in my life where I just went, this is just not working. I got to stop doing it. But toxicology labs is a great example. We tried it for 2 years. Didn't like the business, didn't like where it was going from a legal perspective. Got out of it, bailed on it. Had we stayed in it, could we have grown it? Yeah, but the risk just wasn't worth the reward.
That's incredible advice. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your Cabo vacation. I call it vacation, but you live there. I appreciate you taking time to talk with me. I'm going to head to Colorado on Sunday, so I'm going to try to turn my mind off for a little bit and figure out some of my next moves. But I appreciate your time greatly, James.
Time you want to chat, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Thanks so much for listening to the Real, Raw, Relatable podcast. Please check us out on all the major podcast networks and be sure to subscribe and tell your friends.